You know, I've been thinking, what am I going to do after I finish this? What we have of the series? Well, I'm going to do some movies first. I've already downloaded them. Hunter Stone's give me a list of movies to do, so I'll do those. But then, let's talk about doing a rewatch, reacting to some arc again. I think I want to do that in the rewind format. You know, watch it again as a reaction, and then rewind it. Maybe not to the extent that I'm doing these because it's stuff I've seen before, and people have given me comments about before, and all that stuff. But it would really work well because, like the original video, the original reaction would have gotten comments. So I would start with that Q&A, whatever the original reaction of the video. I would find that video, look at the comments if there are any, do that as my Q&A, then watch the episode like I've been doing with these, then come back and rewind that episode, give it the full treatment. You know, it would be like a special package if people want to re-experience some important part of the series with me. Again, though, what would I watch? I wouldn't want to do that for like something like Wano, and of course Wano I just did, so I wouldn't do that anyway. But even like Water 7, it's my favorite arc, but it's so goddamn long. You know, so I don't know. There has to be an arc that's like important, but is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20 episodes or something. Do that as a trial balloon, see how that plays, you know, on the regular channel. I wouldn't want to commit to something and get 3 views, right? So, somebody has left a couple comments about which arcs I should maybe try to revisit. I don't remember who that was, but it's very detailed. It is in one of my podcasts. I'm going to go look at that before I make any decisions. But if anybody has any other recommendations, let me know. So that's what I'm thinking about. In the meantime, let's go ahead and do this Q&A. For the actual reaction, I've got 2 comments from HIG. Yes, everything you're seeing now is happening very close to the start of the series. The fact that Vegapunk says Kuma's modifications will take 2 years tells you that at the beginning of this episode, we are 2 years away from Marineford, since that's when Kuma had lost his free will. I guess we don't know exactly when he lost it, do we? Because there was a 2-year time jump, right? There was a 2-year time jump. Oh no, it was after Marineford. Yeah, that's right. Because that's when Luffy was grieving. Yeah, okay. I got my 2 years conflated. Okay. So he lost his free will before Marineford, but no, wait a minute. Yeah, he sent everybody away. But then Luffy had the Marineford adventure by himself without any other crew members. Then we had the time jump. Okay. So he sent everybody away, and right after he sent everybody away, I guess he reported back to Eggland and got his free will removed. I guess that's what happened, right? That's why he was so confident when he said, you know, we'll never speak again or whatever it was. We'll never talk to each other again. Okay, yeah, I do remember that. Since that's when Kuma lost his free will. And he still had it a week prior, so it's 1 week, which is when the Straw Hats got separated. So there's only 1 week between when he sent everybody away and Marineford, and that's when the Pacific Assistance showed up and they were attacking and all that shit. Okay. Then Bonnie and Kuma stay at Vegapunk's lab for 6 months, and Kuma leaves Bonnie at the church shortly thereafter. That means that at the end of this episode, we are 1.5 years away from the time skip. If we assume that it took the Straw Hats 6 months to leave the East Blue and travel across the first half of the Grand Line, then by the end of this episode, we are 1 year away from the start of the series. That logic's for me. Like, I can't, like, I tried to poke a hole in it, and then I remembered I was conflating 2 different 2-year time spans. No, that sounds rock solid to me. That sounds exactly what. That's a strong timeline. Also, Aquafina, the warlord that Kuma replaced and then was defeated by Ace, is the father. Now, this is really interesting. I read this yesterday when he first put it. This is super interesting. Is the father of UT and Page 1, the dinosaur siblings from Kato's crew. Odo explained this in an SBS and revealed his design. So you can look him up on the One Piece wiki if you wanted to know what he looked like. I do want to know, but I don't want to look him up yet because he may appear in the series. In a flashback. Yeah, we don't know. Who knows? Like, not, it won't be here, you wouldn't say that, because you've seen up to 39, right? So, but it could appear in 41, you know? We don't know. So, I'll wait and see if the show reveals it. That is very interesting. All right, let's go ahead and get to the rewind comments. First two comments are from Maida Koye. You notice you will have seen maybe the latest podcast Q&A that I did where I put the people's names. We're not there yet. If the Q&A ends up being like an hour and there's like a ton of people leaving comments and a ton of different people, I'll start doing that. But at this point, I don't think there's enough for people to want to skip. If they can, it'll be easy to skip. It's not like a 3-hour Q&A, right? So that's why I'm not doing that here. This is Maida Koye for the next two comments. And then Kuma thought about where to send Sanji, and a wicked smile came upon his face. Hey, that is an interesting one, though. Because some of these, he would have to have extensive dossiers on every member of the crew to know who needed to go where. You could say, okay, Chopper's a doctor. He needs to go to a place where they can teach him more medicine, and he can find medicine supplies. That one's easy. Zoro is a swordsman. We know he fought Mihawk because that's another warlord. And Mihawk kicked his ass. Maybe he had a conversation with Mihawk at some point in one of these dinner tables, one of these meetings, in which he maybe that came up. It's possible. Like if we're trying to connect some dots here, it's within the realm of possibility. Kuma could find out that Zoro wants to become the greatest swordsman in the world. So you send him to a place where he can be trained. Mihawk again. The fact that he's sending him to Mihawk's Island where Mihawk could train him when he had a confrontation with Mihawk seems like a no-brainer to me. So he clearly knew about that. So that's okay. So it's reasonable to assume he could know what to do with Zoro. It's reasonable to assume he could know what to do with Chopper. It's reasonable to assume he can know what to do with Luffy because Luffy is world famous. He's the most famous of Straw Hats. I'm sure the others have things you can know about them. So, and he sent Luffy to a place where, Hancock was predisposed to fall in love with him. So Kuma maybe could connect those dots a little bit. She's another warlord. He knows her. He knows what kind of person she is. Luffy may be the kind of person she could like. He's an innocent in a way. He's not like a player, which would turn her off. And he's not a slave to his desires, which means he become her slave. So that makes sense. Nami makes sense because she's a known navigator. And you send her to a place where she can learn more about that. Weather patterns, weather powers, weather systems, whatever. So that makes sense. What's a little more murky for me is Sanji, Robin, Brooke. Those the other three? Am I missing anybody? Usopp. Those are lesser known crew members. Usopp's bounty doesn't even have his face attached to it. That's Sniper King. Who knows who that is? So, how would he know where to send those 4 people? There must have been detailed revolutionary dossiers on every single crew member. He must have read them, and that let him know where to send them. Because he had the database of places to send them. But he had to match up the right place with the right person. It makes sense for about half the crew. It doesn't make sense for the other half of the crew. So he must have access to more information than would be reasonable to assume. That's the only way I can logic this out. Unless he can read minds, which we know he can't. How the hell did he do that? I don't remember if he asked anybody where they wanted to go. He asked Periwinkle where she wanted to go. I don't know if he asked any of the Straw Hats. I don't think he did. He may have asked 1 or 2 of them. He didn't have time for a lot of them because it was really quick. It was in the middle of a fight and he was just zap, 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 right? He may have asked a couple. He might have asked Luffy. I can't remember. I don't think he did, though. So how the hell would he know where to send them? So that's a question, right? That's one of the questions we have. If we're keeping a notebook full of questions, that's one of them I have. Because here's the thing. Every place he sent worked. Every place. Oh, Frankie's another one. Frankie, he could divine because he can look at Frankie and see what he looks like. He's clearly half man, half machine. And so sending him to an old Vegapunk lab island makes sense. That's another one he could probably reasonably assume. We could reasonably assume how he'd know how to do that, but some of them just don't make sense. Next comment about the gun stuff. In one of the first SBS's Q&As that Odo does, He says that in the world of One Piece, they invented flintlocks that have the capacity to fire multiple shots, as well as the cannonballs that are explosive. That's why the cannonballs explode. It'd be silly to just try to burn an island to the ground with real-life cannonballs. Perhaps they light them up. They light them on fire first. I've always talked about this from the very beginning. You have modern gun turrets, like we would have seen in World War II era and Cold War era cruisers. Dad was on one of those. It's the turret that has the 3 barrels. Dad's guns had 8-inch barrels, but you also had 16 or 4. I think 4. 4, 8, 16, I think is how it went. They look like that. But those don't shoot cannonballs. They shoot bullets, shells. And these shells were massive. Like, I've seen the mechanisms and shit. They would have 3 bags of powder. Of gunpowder and explosive or whatever. They would put those in first, and then they put the shell, or I think they put the shell in first, and they have these 3 bags of powder. So when the hammer comes up to fire the shell, you're exploding 3 bags, and these bags were like this. They were like, you imagine really large couch pillows, those round ones that are circular, like this diameter, this wide, 8 inches diameter actually is what they would be. They were exactly 8 inches in diameter. I saw them. There was a demonstration of one of the turrets was open. You can go in there and you can see it. And you can see what those bags look like, and you see what the shell looks like. Massive. Those things don't shoot cannonballs. Cannons shoot cannonballs. So it's such an interesting blend of technology, where he has modern day looking turrets, but then they shoot cannonballs. That's an interesting blend. That's a mix of technology and fantasy. I like it. In fact, I believe that on a different SBS, Odo drew a diagram of the guns in One Piece explaining the different components. I think he is well versed in gun technology, though he is also a fantasy story writer. Yeah, I mean, I was assuming he didn't know shit, but clearly he does. At one point, I want to go through and read all these SBSs. They're obviously available, and I think it'd be a wealth of knowledge. It's a lot of extra content. Maybe I can do that as a weekly video. Go through, I don't know how long each one is. Just go through one of them, pull out the things I find interesting and talk about. Not necessarily read the whole thing online because into the camera because you've read them before. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll look at that. I'm sure they're all stored in chronological order. And then I can just, start at the beginning and just go all the way through. Because people have mentioned these so many times. It's a wealth of information. All kinds of extra knowledge and behind the scenes content and stuff like that. That are not spoilers, clearly. I would stop probably in any ones that came out this year or I guess 2 years ago, since we're 2 years behind the manga. Just in case he talks about stuff in the manga, which he probably does. I doubt he's not just doing it for the anime. He's doing it for the manga. So, but I can go from the beginning up to 2 years ago. And see how long it takes to go through one of them, talk about my thoughts, maybe do a couple of them in a video or something. That's another video idea. Because this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Anyway, now I'm finally caught up. I can finally do it, Remember, Odo has had over 25 years to learn about everything he wants to put into the story, though clearly not always accurate. I think he does put a lot of effort into studying different cultures for his story. Yeah, I mean, obviously, right? And I wasn't besmirching his intelligence or his knowledge. My thing is, I don't think it matters what the hell the guns operate like, how they operate, where the magazine was. I was just curious, right? I don't think he should spend 5 minutes worried about that, because that's 5 minutes he's not devoting to history or technology or, guns or technology, but like culture or whatever, religion. Things that actually matter that will happen on screen in a more important way. Does it matter how many times the bullets fire or where the bullets come from? No, I don't give a shit, personally. So, I don't think he should spend any time on that. That just doesn't feel important to me. But the fact that he does shows how meticulous he is with everything, which shows, by the way, why he hasn't had any continuity errors. He hasn't had any continuity errors because he's this level of meticulous, right? So the man's a genius. I've said it from the jump, and he has, even more importantly, being a genius, he has a work ethic. I really admire workaholics. Like, they're my heroes. And he somehow has managed to keep a family together, too. I mean, I'm sure the money helps, but still, he doesn't devote his entire life to work, so he spends time with his family. So, I just think that's a hell of a lot of multitasking he's doing there. And what an amazing dude. Moving on, this is Power of Death. I think the timeline is between 1 to 2 years before the story starts. Ace left 3 years before the story started, and I think it took him around 1 year to join Whitebeard's group. He was running his own crew for a year. That makes sense. I'm glad you told me about the 3 years before the story started, because that means that Luffy was 14 when he left. Which means that picture we saw of him running from the tiger, he was definitely not 13 there. He looked more like he was 10 or 11. Now, he's always been a small boy. Guess that explains it. It could still be well, it was like, what, a year and a half before the story started when we saw that picture, right? Because it was after he had left his daughter for the final time. So, Luffy would be 13 and a half, I guess. Because he's... No, I'm sorry. No, I messed that up. Ace left 3 years before the story started. That was a year and a half ago. So, Luffy should be, because he's 17 when the story started, Luffy should be 15 and a half right now, a year and a half before the story started. Luffy should be 15 and a half. He didn't look 15 and a half there, by any means. So I don't know what's going on there. He looked way younger. It could have just been a quick flashback. I don't think it matters, but that was what was throwing me. Like, he didn't look old enough to be within striking distance of when the story starts in that one shot. But colored as he's just he maybe had a growth spurt, right? He kind of weird, since he can stretch himself. Would he even notice if he had a growth spurt? I guess. Just wake up and you're taller. But yeah, that was a year and a half before he left, and he still looked young as hell. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. This is HIG for the last two comments. The ship is coming to pick them up. I was really confused by that. He clarifies it. No, the ship was bringing construction materials to the island and unloaded everything on the island. And then we see Kuma's helping build up Eggland. They are inside a lab building when you see Bonnie sitting on a large pipe. Just remembering her sitting there is hilarious. The scene is hard to decipher, but basically, you're supposed to see the UMIT cargo, kind of like U-Haul, I guess, is written on the ship. And then you're supposed to remember that the UMIT Shipping is the name of the seafaring transportation company in the New World. You get one mention of it in the story at Big Mom's tea party when the president of the company is one of the guests. You know, it's kind of interesting. What are pirates known for? Sacking cities. Okay. What's the second thing they're known for? Kidnapping women? Okay. What's the third thing they're known for? Drinking rum? All right, I'll just tell you the answer. The third, what pirates are most known for is attacking shipping. Okay? They attack shipping. Here is the owner of the biggest shipping company in this region attending Big Mom's party. So, in other words, he's kissing that big fat ass so that her pirates, nobody under her control will attack his shipping. Basically, he's there to pay homage. He probably transports all her food for free. Anytime she needs transportation anywhere, like goods and services, it's his ships that do it. You need these cookies and candies brought from various foreign places and brought back to her island. His ships do it. All that, I'm reading between the lines here, but this is what I'm thinking. All that's done so that his ships don't get attacked. That's what I get from this. So I think that's what's happening there. That's very interesting. All right, well, let's go ahead and get to the. That's it for the Q&A. Let's get to the episode, and I'll come back for the rewind. Okay, here we go with the rewind. Let's go ahead and get started with the title. To the Sea Where My Father Is, the future Bonnie chooses. So she chose her future. Yeah, that's another spoiler. So, thanks for that, show. There's a reason why I avoid these titles like the plague. This whole thing here is interesting. His stalking Luffy. Now, what I don't know is, does this happen before or after his conversation with Dragon? I think after, because they show this, then he has a conversation with Dragon, and they show this again. So I think what happens is they go here. He has a conversation with Dragon, and then he comes to check in on Luffy himself to see for himself what kind of person he is. I think that sets up what he chooses to do in the next episode, which I think the next episode is probably going to be it for the flashbacks. We'll see, but probably. But that's what I think the timeline is. You know, for once, they actually give a character's goddamn age. Wow. About 50 other anime could learn from this example. Just tell us their effing age. Thank you and good night. Because Jesus Christ, I'd be holding on to that information for no reason. But thank you for explaining this time. I appreciate it. He's so young and cheerful here. I thought for a second we were going to see how he ends up in the barrel, which I know we know that, but I've never seen it on the show, right? So I thought they were going to show that for a second, but we're not that far in yet. This is an extremely layered conversation. There's a lot going on here. You seem extremely familiar with this country. Nice opening salvo there, right? You even ventured to a small village on its outskirts. I guess we finally get an explanation in this episode for why he's never contacted Luffy, even though he cares about Luffy. For the longest time, it seemed like neither one of them gave a shit about the other one. Luffy sure as hell don't care about him. He hasn't asked Robin a single question that we've seen. He don't care. And it seemed like Dragon didn't care. Dragon does care. He knows that children are weakness. He probably has figured out what's happened with Kuma, right? So, he knows. And so he's kept it a secret. But he does care and he is stalking, right? So, that's kind of interesting. That's a side to him I never thought we'd get. See, this is a sentence that can be taken two different ways. One, you'll kill me if you keep talking about this. Literally. You keep talking about this, the word's going to get out, and people will be able to use Luffy to get me killed. Now, what he's not factoring in here, Luffy becomes such a badass that getting Luffy is going to be hard as hell. Who's going to do that? Right now, there are probably, counting the elders in Black Hoodie, there's probably 10 people or less in the world who could dominate and capture Luffy one-on-one. Now, a group, who knows? Who knows about that? But one-on-one, there's 10 or fewer people in the world who can do that. He's relatively safe. But you can see a scenario where if it was a lesser son, they can be captured and used against him, right? So you can't let that happen. The other way you can take this sentence is you'll kill me emotionally. Like, talking about it and thinking about it hurts me. So that's a metaphor. That's a metaphoric way you can take this. I love the double-layered conversations. Here he elaborates. Kuma asks, why is that? He says, a child is their parents' weak spot. You should know. And then he looks over. Before he finishes that sentence, he looks over at Kuma. Yeah, I mean, we get it, right? So does he. Yeah, and Kuma reacts, of course. Huh? What? I guess I'll shut up now. I'll just let it go. Yes, you should. But we know now. This was very informative. It's my favorite conversation in a while. And there's been a lot of good ones lately. Nice transition, by the way. Definitely the visual language here is telling us this happens after that conversation. Even though they showed part of this before that conversation. That transition went this direction. Which means that was older, this is newer. So it is interesting. I don't really care about this too much. That's why we're not really going to dwell on him training. There's nothing new there that we know. We know all this. It's fun to see him this young again. And it's interesting that Kuma was watching him. But I don't, there's nothing interesting there. There's nothing new there. I do like how he said, I don't eat cowards. So he will only eat the brave animals. That's pretty interesting. And like I said, the fact they had personal snails back then, no, they didn't. So retcon, but fine. It's fun. It's a good retcon. I missed this line of dialogue. It's not particularly interesting, but it is a line I missed. I guess a beast like the Lord of this mountain still lurks here. And he's thinking that's what he sensed, right? I'm going to kick its ass. I do like that. I do like that they clearly demonstrate the way he's been a warlord. He's not following the orders. He's getting the orders followed. He's getting the orders accomplished, fulfilled, or whatever word we want to use. But he does it his way, not their way. Their way would have been screw these victims, which is what you're supposed to be protecting, or why do you care that the pirates are attacking people? Kind of doesn't make sense, does it? Screw the victims, just go take out the pirates. I guess you're thinking greater good. The quicker we get all the pirates in the world taken care of, the quicker nobody gets their ships attacked anymore. But if you don't care about what the pirates are attacking, then why do you send them out here in the first place? Why do you care about the pirates? They're trying to have it both ways. They don't care about the victims, so why do they care about the perpetrators? What is that? Is it just that the perpetrators are offending them by, their existence? I guess you could say. I don't know. I mean, that is odd. They don't give a shit about him helping the victims, but they want the people that victimize them. I'm not sure that makes sense. But maybe it's just the fact they just want pirates because pirates are not under their control. So they want them taken out. I guess that could be it. I like, this is just such a great episode. There's not much to comment on here. We have a lot less lore this episode than we've been getting. But the imagery, his poetry of his writing, and the music, the combination of those two things are just exquisite. They're really good. I talked about this at the end of the episode, which I had recorded in the middle of the episode. How stupid it is intercepting letters. I don't particularly buy it. She's a sadistic asshole. That's fine. Those exist. There are people that would do this. But that person happened to be the one who's in control here when we already have a lot of misery in this flashback. Just feels manipulative and forced, and I don't buy it. So, enough of that. But it's just deeply, profoundly stupid on top of everything else. It's dumb. It's just dumb, man. There was unnecessary. What did you accomplish by doing that? Make a little girl cry. This one action did more harm to the government than we don't know how this is all going to play out. But just the fact she went out there may end up getting her father's memories placed inside one of his bodies. And apparently has some kind of powers in that maybe pair with Luffy's. Is this the ultimate power couple? Maybe not necessarily romantic, but just a power couple in that, when they come together, their complementary powers can take out anybody. Maybe that's what we're about to see when we finally get back to Saturn in 25 episodes. Whenever the hell that is. When we finally get back to Saturn, maybe we're going to see her powers pair with his. If that's what happens, this is the biggest mistake of the entire series. This one action, this one series of actions, methodically preventing these letters from getting to the kid, could topple a government, a world government, could change the power structure over in the entire planet. This one person doing this one series of actions, keeping the kid from getting the letters, could be enough. Now, we still had the matter of she started bragging, so she's a moron in a different way. She single-handedly sabotaged everything. Bragging in the bar, that would still have happened. But I wonder if she would have been as motivated to go out and find her dad if she was getting regular letters from him. I don't see how she would have been. She may have still wanted to leave, and she may have been encouraged to leave simply because you're being held here against your will. You've been cured. Maybe she leaves anyway. Maybe it's not as devastating as what I'm saying, but it's hypothetically possible, depending on how everything plays out. This one person doing this one thing toppled the world government. Because maybe Luffy can't do it without her. Or without Kuma. Maybe one or both of those people end up causing massive harm to the government. It's all speculation at this point. But this is just so stupid. And so unnecessary. It'd be different if it was vital to keeping her under control. It actually had the opposite effect. Deeply stupid. I do really like this part. Was I seeing things? I knew I wasn't seeing things. Like she gaslit herself. Never doubt yourself. If you think you see a ghost in the corner of your eye, maybe you did. Don't doubt that shit. Just because when you turn your head you don't see it no more, don't mean it wasn't there. Don't gaslight yourself. That's all I'm saying. I like how this old bitch just never trusted these people, and she's been around a long time. The older you get, the more cynical you get, the less you trust people. I think that's just a natural occurrence. I've seen it with old people all my life, and now I am an old person. I'm seeing it with myself and my peers. Because we've seen all the different ways people can screw each other over. So, the old woman's on it. She's on all this, and she helped make this happen as much as the incompetent buffoon did, Incompetent. I particularly love this line. A wise wolf hides his fangs. That is true. A wise wolf does do that, don't they? That's a good line. I like it. That's unbelievable, Doctor. It's complete already. Yeah, now all I have to do is lift the lab in my brain into the air with island clouds. So I guess what they're talking about is when he had separated his brain. That's what she's talking about, being ready. Interesting. You notice like his assistants are gone by now. So probably didn't want anybody to know too much about what he was doing. So Stacey's here. The only reason she's here is because he needs somebody to talk to. And I guess the clones aren't ready yet. The Vegapunk clones aren't ready yet. So he's got here. But all those other lab coat assistants we saw him have, they're gone. Not sure why, but I think it must be for security reasons. I like how she said nice head cut. We know why he did the apple. The author did the apple on his head, but like that's just a weird choice for the character. Guess you need something to cover your open, exposed brain pan. But I wouldn't have left an air gap there. I'm just saying, get infection, man. What if somebody spills some cigarette ash into your brain? Like you need that shit closed off. This is a weird ass question. A human without free will or a clone with free will? Who has it worse? Why would a clone with free will have it worse? Under what circumstances would that be possible? Is it the idea that the clone would know they're always a clone and they're not really free? Like their body is in prison, maybe? They can't leave the island, for instance, or whatever. But they have free will. Their mind is free, but the body's not free. Or their body is free, but their mind's not free. That's probably what she's asking. I'm not sure. It's a weird question. But that's how I interpret that question. Does anybody else find it odd that Kuma had to ask, what does it mean to lose your free will? Does anybody not know what losing your free will means? I probably knew what that meant when I was 12. It's for the audience. Just in case, I guess, any of these younger kids in the audience don't really know what that means, to lose your free will. But Kuma's a grown-ass man. He has to know what that means. So, I think that's just for the audience. He asked a question so Einstein here could explain it to the audience. That's what I'm thinking. Also, to deliver this very specific definition, which wouldn't necessarily mean, if I was to define what losing your free will means, I don't know if I would define it this way. So they're giving us the show definition, so we know what it means. The loss of your memories from living as a human, and you lose all your human emotions. So that's specific to the show. To us, losing your free will just means you can't, like, you got to follow all your orders. You can't do anything on your own. Like, I choose to take a sip of this drink. But if I had been ordered to never take a sip of that drink, I couldn't have done it, even though I wanted to. So that's losing your free will. The whole memory and emotion thing, that's a show definition, so that's also why they did this. So that they could give us, this is what it means for this show. So this next conversation is very interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through the conversation without commentary first, then go back through it with commentary. So she starts off, notice the expression on her face, by the way. Doesn't seem like concern. She starts off, how do you feel? Are you starting to feel anxious? He says no, and then even though we're on Vegapunk, it's Kuma talking. I'm more worried about, and of course he's going to say his daughter, obviously. What else would he say? But she cuts him off. She don't give a shit about what he's worried about. She cares about what she's asking about. You're not being honest. Now, I'm sure he's being honest about being more worried about his daughter, but she didn't even let him finish that part. So she means you're not being honest about not being worried. You'll lose your memories and emotions. And they keep emphasizing the emotion part too, which is interesting. So, I did say we were going to walk through this one time, so let's do that first. It's impossible to come to terms with it. Especially if you have someone important to you. Now, that's a different look on her face. That's kind of interesting. And then he comes and says, but I'll ensure you, or then Vegapunk says, but I'll ensure you retain a minimum level of free will until it's fully complete. Well, gee, thanks. So, I assume he means after the year is up. It's almost impossible to get through this conversation without talking. So, let me just try to do that real quick. You have roughly a year until then. And, of course, he's starting a letter, which is how he copes, right? This is his therapy. It doesn't matter if she reads them or not. Now, obviously, he wants her to read them, but, this is his therapy. Which takes us back to what he cared about in this conversation, which was, what he's more worried about rather than what she cares about in this conversation. And he says, over the next year, I'm going to write down a lifetime's worth of feelings. All that he cares about is telling his daughter that he loves her, right? That's so sweet. She'll turn 9 soon, and then we segue into that part of the conversation. So, there are a number of things that are interesting about all this. When I watched this in the original reaction, I thought she was trolling him with these questions. Just like I thought she was trolling him in the previous conversation. I don't know why she's asking it. There's something here. There's some reason she's asking these questions. There's some reason why she cares more about what he feels and thinks than what he feels and thinks about his daughter. There's a reason why she's trying to direct the conversation one way. They're having two different conversations. There's a reason why she's doing it one way and a reason why he's doing it the other way. We know his reason. We don't know her reason. I don't know what her motivation is. I don't think she's trolling him. I think she actually cares, but her expression is like almost cheerful here. It doesn't match the subject matter. How do you feel? Are you starting to feel anxious? How do you feel about you're going to lose your mind? Like this is like talking to an Alzheimer's patient. And with the doctor tells him within a year, there's a lot of similarities here. Within a year, you have completely lost your mind. If you're talking to somebody, you know that they have a year to keep their mind. They may live for 20 years. They only have one more year that they keep their mind, and then their mind is gone. Are you going to have that expression on your face when you ask them how they feel about this? Are you starting to feel anxious? So there's something there. Like, I don't know what that is. That's a discontinuity. Like, her expression doesn't match what she's asking. So I don't know what's going on there. I still think she cares, but her expression makes it seem like she doesn't. So, I don't know. And like I said, he says, no, I'm more worried about, and then she cuts him off. You're not being honest. She's projecting here. I don't think he is anxious because doing it saves his daughter. It's a price he's willing to pay. He don't give a shit what happens to him. They could line him up and kill him. Shoot him in the face the second she's cured, and he would be okay with that. I don't think he'd be throwing a parade, but I don't think he'd be nervous or anxious or worried about it. All he cares about is saving his daughter. So she's saying he's not being honest. I don't think that's true. And I don't think anything we've seen from him has indicated that would be true. So she is 100% projecting. Why is she doing that? Why is she projecting? Why does she care about this specific issue? And why is she imposing on him what she would feel in that situation? Is she facing something like that? We don't know. Is she worried that, if she gets caught, because I assume by this point she's already infiltrated CP9, right? Like CP0? I don't remember if she was part of the group in Water 7 or not. I think she was, which means she's been infiltrating them for a long time. Maybe she's worried about what the government will do to her. Not kill her, but like turn her into a slave. I don't know, but I don't know why. Maybe this happened to somebody she knows. I don't know why, but like she's projecting something. I have a theory that is a complete fan wink theory that there's no evidence for, but there's two pieces of evidence, maybe. But I'm curious what you think. What do you think's going on with her? Why does she care? Why is she projecting? Why is this what's on her mind? You'll lose your memories and emotions it's impossible to come to terms with. Now, it could be the author just wants to make sure the audience understands this, and they're using her as a device to do that. Like we said before, we talked about this before with something else. They're doing a little hand-holding in this episode, making sure the audience understands certain things. That could be all this is. I think there's more to it. Especially if you have someone important to her. And here is where we see the concern in her face. This is what her face should have looked like when she asked the original question. So this is the most personal thing to her. Did she have a parent who has Alzheimer's? Maybe. Did this somehow happen to somebody she cares about, or did it happen to her for temporarily? That's the question, right? I don't know. But this is somehow personal to her. This is a clear look of concern on her face. That even after she turns her face to look at him, you can still see the concern on her face, which we didn't see before. So this is becoming more and more personal to her. Who is important to her? Her mother? Is that her mother or her grandmother that was with the Rocks Pirates? Can't remember. But maybe that's who we're talking about? And he talked about, this is what I was going to say before. I'll ensure you retain a minimum level of free will until it's fully complete. So, I think what he means is after a year, he's going to start turning off the free will and turning him into a slave. And then he's going to make sure that that process takes a long time, as long as possible. So, until the very end, until it's complete, fully integrated, he will have a minimum amount of free will. I don't know why that's important, but they made sure to tell us that. So, because when we see him, he's under complete control. Unless they're talking about what's happening currently, where he's like rampaging across the world, trying to get back to his memories, or whatever the hell it is he's doing. So maybe it's still not completely fully integrated, and this is what they're talking about here. It's possible. Or it never fully integrated, and he always had a minimum small amount of free will. That's possible. So I guess this could explain what the hell's been going on with that one body that's rampaging, right? Okay, so then he grabs the letter. Okay, so here's my question. What one other time in this series have we seen somebody with the power to remove memories and free will? There's one other time we've seen that in this series. Do you remember what it was? Dressrosa, with the girl that can turn people into toys. Now, that's interesting because it's split. The toys have no free will. It's self-imposed. Like they can exercise free will if they want to, but then they get punished, right? So they self-impose, they follow every order and every rule because doing anything else results in extreme punishment. So they have no free will as a self-imposed thing. Then there's the fact that their family members lose their memories of them. They become a non-entity. So the trauma we're talking about here with Kuma is both things happening to him personally. He loses the memories, and then he loses the free will. In Dressrosa, one side lost the free will, the other side lost the memories. But did this happen to her? Was she temporarily turned into a toy as some kind of demonstration of power or whatever, accidentally, or she said something that pissed off the doll girl, the toy girl, or said something that pissed off Daffy, because they kind of are antagonistic because she's, as far as Daffy knows, she is government, and he's a pirate warlord, but also just kind of antagonistic towards the government. So did that happen? Was she temporarily, maybe even only just for a few minutes, turned into a toy, nobody remembered her, and for that brief period of time, her mom or whoever she loves didn't remember her. Then she was turned back, and then they did. Were they even with her, where she could see it firsthand that they didn't remember her, or was it just her team? This is my crack theory. This is my fanway theory. Because this seems very personal to her. She's obsessed with this idea and is projecting on him things that he is not demonstrating. So that's how she feels. this is what she would be feeling in this situation. Why? I wonder if it has something to do with that. This is a very minor thing. It doesn't matter. It's just one little thing that could have happened in the past. This could just be a device for the audience to remember what's going to happen to him, and that he should be worried about it, and the cost of it, and his sacrifice, the depth of his sacrifice, the extreme nature of his sacrifice. That could be what this is about, or it could be this deeper thing. The only other reason I would think this, the one tenuous piece of evidence is, last episode, we saw Daffy get the news of Kuma becoming a warlord. Or whatever that was. I can't remember exactly. When they went around and gave the news to everybody about Kuma, right? I think it's when he became a warlord. The toy girl's the one that told Daffy this. Why? He has, 6, 8 lieutenants? He has minions that are closer to him? Sycophants that come to him with everything? We've seen that. We've seen his whole power structure. We've seen his organization. The author could have picked anybody to bring that news to Daffy. He picked her. I wonder if he picked her in the previous episode because he was going to do this in this episode, and he wants to associate the two with proximity. Here, let me bring her back into your mind. You haven't thought about her in 200 episodes. Let me bring her back into your mind. And then later he could do a flashback where he reveals all this. Maybe she'll get a series of flashbacks at some point. Why is she a double agent? When did it happen? How did it all take place? And in that storyline, maybe we would get this thing where she was temporarily turned into a doll, or maybe somebody else turned into a doll. Like, I don't know why her mom would be around at the time, but maybe that happened. And she temporarily lost her memories of her mom, and then they got them back. Because this feels personal to her. I think something happened to her personally. Maybe we'll never know. I don't know. But that's my theory. And, what brought it to mind was, why specifically it had to be somebody, so somebody had to bring the news, so he had to be somebody, but why specifically her? She doesn't seem like the kind of person who brings him news, right? We never really saw her hang out with him. Like she was busy in the toy factory the entire time, right? Monitoring them or whatever, turning people into toys, always ready to do that as a punishment for any citizen who violates whatever. There are other people that don't really serve a function or have a job on the island that could have brought him the news. It was her. So I just think that's interesting. Could be true. It could be never addressed, or who the hell knows. But yeah, I think it's interesting. There's nothing really to say about these scenes. So it's her birthday. She celebrates. But that is one awesome ass pizza. Look how big that damn pizza is. Given how big it is, how big was the damn oven? And how are they holding it in the way that they're holding it without their chest being scorched? Right? Because it's still hot too, right? So I have a few practical questions, but yeah, it's a great pizza. This is probably my favorite shot from all the ones that they did in the little montage of drawings to show her birthday celebration. Number one, at first I thought she was getting some air, right? Like she's jumping 9 feet in the air. She'd be a great basketball player. She's on some Michael Jordan shit. But no, she's actually standing on that guy's shoulders because it's his hat that she's wearing, right? So she's standing on his shoulders, wearing his hat, doing the thumbs, the gun thing up in the air or whatever. I don't know. But, yeah, so she's not jumping. When I originally saw this, I thought she was jumping. But, yeah, still hilarious either way. This is interesting. He's playing a cat and mouse game with the revolution and with the government, and I think both sides know what he's doing. They're just waiting for it. I think the government knows they're tolerating it because he was defying orders to their face, right? It's like, I told you to go to the ship now. No, I'm going to save the people first, right? So they know, but they also know he's eventually going to get his free will taken away, so what's the point in disciplining him? They're going to have complete control at some point. So they're just playing a waiting game. I think the government, the elders, and Black Hoodie are really good at playing a waiting game. Because especially the elders and Black Hoodie, they have long lives. They seem to live for a long time. So the longer you live, the more patient you are, right? If you have a year to live, you're going to be super impatient with everything. You don't have time to waste on anything. If you have 1,000 years to live, and at least is what you believe, you have 1,000 years to live, then you're very patient. You have nothing but time, man. Nothing but time. So you can wait them out. It's like, well, if we wait a year, we have complete control. We're, done. I think that's what they're doing. Yeah, this is like she really screwed up with the whole letter thing I've already discussed ad nauseum. But two other mistakes. What the hell is she wearing on her legs? What are those, like fishnet stockings or something? The way to tell us you're not a nurse. You're a naughty nurse, maybe, but you are not a nurse. Which I think we know she's a naughty nurse because she gets drunk at the bar. God knows what happens after the bar closes. We can speculate. You know, I have a few ideas, but yeah, she's a naughty nurse. But also, she just handled this badly too. Like, it's just if she was letting her Kuma stay in contact with Bonnie. If the nurse was letting that happen, it would be easier to control her because then you could say, this is what your father wants, or you're going to disrespect your father's wishes. But you can't say that because her father hasn't stayed in contact like he promised, so his word carries no weight anymore. So there's so many ways she screwed herself by not letting the letters through. It's just dumb as hell, man. One of the dumber decisions I've seen any character make in this series. So yeah, she undercuts herself at every opportunity, this nurse. What is that? Is that just a bruise? I've never seen a bruise like this on the show. Typically what they do is they do the big bump, right? The big pink bump when somebody's injured. This looks like almost like a burn. So at first I thought she had like a fruit power. We know she doesn't because she goes in the ocean. And we don't see her either die or get rescued. So she can swim. So I think it's just a bruise. But it's a weird bruise. We haven't seen anything like that before. Look at that guy behind her. He's looking straight at her ass. That's the only thing he's looking at. That ass. It has a big ass barrel she's drinking from. She ain't drinking from no glass, man. This isn't a glass of wine. That's straight beer out of a barrel. She's getting crunk. Man, this is a party girl. I like her a little better now. She was out there getting drunk and talking shit. She ain't gonna be the first person to lose a job because she was getting drunk and talking shit. Look at her. She's ready to let it all go, man. She's ready to risk it all. Got 2 barrels of beer in front of her, and it looks like some wine or whiskey over there on the right. Yep, she's telling everything. Why are you telling this shit? Like, that is just incompetent, man. And then they make the point when during the reaction. I made this point during the commercial break, and then a couple minutes later they make the point in the show. It's also strange that Kuma hasn't sent a single letter. Obviously, who wouldn't think that, right? Like, you just know the person. If he was a different person, different kind of father, this would be a different conversation. This should have never entered their mind. Like, if their letters aren't being sent, he's either dead or somebody's stopping the letters from getting here. Those are the only 2 possibilities. There's no way he's not writing you. So, I hate that this had to be told to Bonnie. But she is only 9. So, there is that. But, like, you would think being 9, you'd be more likely to believe something bad happened rather than just believe he turned on you. You know? Thinking people betrayed you is a very adult way of thinking. Kids don't naturally assume that. They think something's wrong. Not everybody's the same, but I don't know. I hate that Bonnie had to be told this, but at least she was told this. This is when she's told this and she realizes the depth of the treachery, right? It believes in her father again. Well, also, you notice they repeat the shot. The first shot when she was doubting her father at their 9th birthday, he still hadn't written. The tears hit her knees. This exact same camera angle. They repeat that camera angle here when she realizes her father didn't betray her. It's the Navy who betrayed her. So it's interesting they repeated that shot as 2 different circumstances. It's interesting also, she'd already set all this up before she talked to the kid. She's already talked to Gojo and the others. They're already waiting at the port. Now all that has to happen is Bonnie has to join them. So this woman knows how to control the flow of information. You don't say shit to the kid until you're ready to move. Because you don't know what she'll do. She might lash out at the nurse next time she sees her if you tell her this shit. So, you don't tell her jack shit until you're ready for her to move. You tell her this and you tell her to go. That's very smart. This woman knows how to do it, man. And she was a dowager queen, so of course she knows. She's been doing court politics before any of us were born, right? So, By the way, I assume this has been her pirate hat the whole time, right? Since we first met her. So, whenever we first saw Granny there with this hat on, I bet that was very exciting for people who have functioning memories. I didn't remember that, right? So, of course, I wasn't excited. But I'm assuming the people who actually have functional brains first saw the Dowager Queen with this hat on. They're like, oh, so that's how Bonnie gets that. That's a cool moment. That's really cool. And again, another parallel, I just realized, another parallel with Luffy. She gets a hat from somebody that means something to her who helped her when she was young. Maybe around the same age as Luffy. Luffy, I think, is younger, but still, she gets a hat. She is definitely the yin to his yang. Such an interesting thing that she would come along so late if she's this important. Maybe I'm overplaying it and overthinking it in my head. Maybe she's not as important as I think. But if I'm right about her, we probably should have met her a long time ago. But either way, maybe he didn't think of it until late. I don't know. Or maybe he's just holding it back. Like, that happens sometimes. We didn't see the Emperor until the third Star Wars movie. I mean, one quick hologram, that's about it. Sometimes you hold back the really important characters. Considering how important the Emperor is, we didn't see him at all in the first movie. Briefly in the second movie, and finally the third and final movie, what was going to be the final movie. He's in it a lot, right? So there is precedent for this. But if she's as important as I think she is, then it is interesting that we're now finally, like, this really, if nothing else convinces you that this is the final act of the series, this should, right? So, very, very interesting. Who is thinking this? I think the nurse is. Gojo's group, they're not ordinary fishermen. They're thuggish fishermen and even local pirates and sea monsters. Sea monsters. It sounds like she's racist, like fishermen. She thinks like fishermen are, fishmen. I mean, the fishmen are sea monsters because, I mean, as far as we know, the actual sea monsters and sea beasts are not part of his crew. So that must be what she means. Oh, shit. Wait a minute. I misunderstood because it was two separate sentences. They're thuggish fishermen and even... I thought she was saying they're thuggish fishermen and even local pirates and sea monsters. What she's saying is they're thuggish fishermen, comma, there should be a comma there, and even local pirates and sea monsters fall silent at the mention of their names. So they're a bigger deal than what has been led on so far. They'll surely help you see your father. Oh, okay, so... I was thinking this nurse, this is the Dowager Queen saying this. Gotcha. That's what she said before the kid left. They'll surely help you see your father. So they have the ability to become a strong crew for her as a pirate. Now, I questioned this during the reaction. Why does she come rolling in here like this? What does she see or hear or think to make her suddenly look for Bonnie? We don't know. I don't know if somebody's spotted her in the port and sent word back, hey, I just saw the kid that you're watching in the port. She's like, nah, you're crazy. Let me go make sure. She comes in here like she already knows something's up. I don't think we can find out why. It's like she's breathing hard, looking around, panicking. Why? The queen left, so what? Right? Like, why would you, like, it should have been hours, well, like, the feeding or giving medicine should be when you, like, notice it. But she comes in here like she heard something. And, like, it's not even that she thought something was up with the queen, because she is surprised to see the queen here. I don't know what tipped her off. It's not clear. This is quite the unhinged rate here. She's allowed to do anything short of murder. Like, she can break all her bones or whatever, drag her ass back, and there's no such inhibitions towards the crew. So she'll kill the crew, sink the ship, do whatever horrible thing she's imagining doing to Bonnie, except killing her, and then drag her battered body back to the prison cell, right? Which I'm sure is what it would have. It wouldn't be the church anymore. This is what's going through her unhinged brain. All of it, a massive overreaction to the fact that she dropped the ball repeatedly. She's the worst CP agent I've ever seen. And we've seen some terrible ones. She is just, and I don't mean worse than like evil, although she is evil, and she is sadistic. She is just flat out incompetent. Like, pathetically incompetent. Like, there are people on sitcoms who are better at their jobs than her. Just bad. So that's why she's so mad, because she knows she sucks. And I'm not making a judgment call here, but it's an observation. It's an interesting observation. Luffy, in this situation, would worry about protecting his crew, his ship. She's worried about protecting herself. She says, if I get caught here, and then she goes and she holds her arm that got injured, looks down at her arm, puts her hand where the injury was, and then she's like, I don't want that. So Now, she's 9. Luffy has been older. He's been 16, 17 when he's been protecting people. But she thought about protecting herself. Luffy would think about protecting the crew because the crew is also in danger here. I just think that's an interesting difference. It could just be their ages. Then bring this up. What does Nika look like? And then she sees him briefly up there. Notice he's like bigger. It looks like her father, essentially. You know, where obviously Luffy is skinny, and I think the other shots we've seen has been skinny. So for her, it's just a representation of her dad. You know, which makes sense. She's about to stomp some ass. Distorted future, huh? They say his body's had properties like rubber. Now, we never hear Kuma say this to her, so this is a flashback of something we never hear. She briefly taps into that power, even though that's not her power. Like, that's why I said talent on loan from God. Now, Rush Limbaugh used to say that, right? And he would start every radio cast, radio show. He would start every radio show where he would basically brag on himself for a minute and then he would get into the show. And it was tongue in cheek, right? But he would say, talent on loan from God, right? And since he's dead, I guess the talent went back to God. Yeah. But that phrase has always stuck with me because it's so cheeky and so arrogant. And then here, I think it's literally true. Because she was briefly given this power to see her fate, and also I think because she's the yang to Luffy's yin. Yin and yang don't necessarily mean partners either. It could be opposites, adversaries. Just there's two parts that complete a whole. They don't have to work together necessarily. I think they will. They could even be destined to be lovers, or maybe not even lovers, but just a couple, a power couple, like I said. I think they're going to be the ultimate power couple, literally and figuratively. But I may be really getting ahead of myself. But it is very interesting that she temporarily got his power. Could he temporarily get her power? I think we see some of that. Because he does get old after he's used the Joy Boy for a couple of minutes. We've also seen him get really young, really small, when he couldn't handle one of his other, was it Gear 3? Gear 4, something like that. He gets really small for a while. Then he figured out how to not do that. So you could say they both have aspects of the other person's power. These are the two fruits that go together. They pair well. They become, the two fruits are a good power couple, and the two people who have eaten the fruits are a good power couple. And they can both be like guys, they can both be girls. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic couple, but I think it is a couple. This is really, really interesting that she does this. He fought however he fancied. Like anything he can fancy, he does. And we're seeing more and more of this. More and more this show is saying that people can just impose their will on reality. Kind of like Neo in The Matrix. If you could dream it, you could do it. I worked for a guy named Christopher Lowe, who had a TV show on one of these like minor cable networks 20 years ago. And it was called Christopher Lowe, I think it was called If You Could Dream, You Could Do It. That was his slogan anyway. If you can dream it, you can do it. If it can pass through your mind, you can make it happen. You just have to have the willpower to make it happen. That's another thing that's always stuck with me. If you can dream it, you can do it. That's kind of applies here, She doesn't say Gum Gum, though. She just calls out the god by name. Nika like future. Nika like punching you in the face. She gonna kick your ass. Another thing, too, to think about. Think about how unhindered the rage is in a kid. Unbridled rage. As we grow older, we learn how to control our rage when we're at our most angry. For me, it's like an ice cold water just pours over my entire body. Just a chill encompasses my entire body. I get ice cold, and I don't feel anything. Like emotionally, like everything's just dead, and I'm just gonna take care of this situation. Whatever's really, really pissed me off. I just get furious, and then I take action, whatever that is. But it's all very much under control because I'm a grown-ass adult. A child will just they'll tear up the room, they'll throw things, they'll attack people, they'll roll around on the floor, thrashing their limbs, all that immature ass shit, because they just have no self-control. So is a 9-year-old. She doesn't have the self-control of an adult. This unbridled rage hit this bitch like a Mack truck. She never had a chance. Like, not even Luffy has this kind of unbridled rage when he's super protective. You hurt my friends, now I'm going to kick your ass. He's older. She may be very, very dangerous for this reason. She doesn't hold back, even when she should, right? She might have killed this bitch for all we know. We don't know for sure. On par with Luffy's. Kind of like the message of this episode, I think. On par with Luffy. Well, that's one hell of an episode, man. I remember the first episode of season 7 of Buffy, the final season. They didn't announce it as the final season until about halfway through the season. But you know when I knew? The end of the first episode. That's when anybody else who was paying attention should have known. And the writers even said that in an audio commentary later. They said, if you were paying attention, you knew when you saw this scene, this is the end of the series. And it was, what they did was, they brought back all the big bads from the previous 6 seasons. In order, in reverse order. They started with the season 6 big bad. And then they showed the season 5 big bad, season 4 big bad, season 3 big bad, season 2 big bad, and the season 1 big bad. All in a sequence at the very end of the first episode of season 7. They counted backwards. And then one of the last things the character who was the season 1 big bad said is, we're going right back to the beginning, full circle, right? So when you saw that scene, you knew that's a wrap for this series. We've got 21 episodes left, and that's a wrap. This series will be over. There will be no new episodes. Man, they've been telling us for weeks, this is the last story. We already knew this, but like they're telling us textually. We're not talking about news alerts. We're not talking about what the author said, the final saga. We're not talking about none of that crap. They're telling you textually we're getting to the end of the series. Because, man, it's been information out the ass lately. Connections being made out the ass lately. So that's why it was a perfect time for me to start this rewind. Wish I'd have started a little bit earlier, but I didn't think of it. So, yeah, this just can't wait for the next episode.